The bridge in the woods. The woods had always been a place of intrigue and fear for the people of Ashford. It was an old forest, dense and untamed, where the trees seemed to grow taller with each passing year, their branches tangled together like the fingers of some long-forgotten giant. It was the kind of place where daylight struggled to reach the ground, casting the forest floor in a perpetual twilight, even at noon. But there was one place within the woods that was known to all, a place feared by many and avoided by most, the old bridge. The bridge was nothing more than a dilapidated wooden structure, half submerged in moss and creeping ivy, spanning a shallow, fast-moving creek. It had been built generations ago by the town's founders, but no one in recent memory could recall when it had last been used. Over time, the bridge had fallen into disrepair, its planks rotting, its supports cracked and unstable. But there was something more about it, something unnatural. The stories surrounding the bridge had been passed down from one generation to the next. It was said to be cursed. Some claimed it was the site of a gruesome murder, others believed that it had once been a ritual site for some ancient, dark cult. There were those who swore they saw figures standing at the far end of the bridge at night, figures that vanished as soon as you looked away. No one who ventured to the bridge at night ever came back the same. Some came back silent, their eyes wide with terror. Others came back, missing. Ethan had always thought the stories were just that, stories. He was skeptical, especially after his recent move to Ashford with his wife, Claire. Ethan was a man of logic, not superstition. But when the opportunity arose to take a walk in the woods, to explore the one place everyone seemed to talk about with fear in their voices, Ethan felt a strange pull. Claire warned him against it, but he brushed it off. "It's just a bridge, Claire," he said with a smile. "There's nothing supernatural about it." She looked at him for a long moment, her face full of concern, but said nothing. Claire knew the stories, just like everyone else. But Ethan's confidence was unshakable, and so she stayed behind, watching him disappear into the trees. The woods were quieter than Ethan expected as he walked deeper, the path barely visible beneath the overgrowth. As the trees closed in around him, a soft breeze whispered through the leaves, and the distant sound of rushing water grew louder. He could almost feel the weight of the forest pressing down on him, but he pushed the unease away. The bridge was close now, he could feel it. When he finally came upon it, the sight was more unsettling than he had imagined. The bridge was old, yes, but it was also strangely preserved. The wood was damp, darkened by years of neglect, but it wasn't rotting as he had expected. It was as though the bridge had been frozen in time, caught between decay and preservation. Ethan stepped forward, his boots crunching against the loose gravel as he approached. The bridge creaked beneath his weight, the sound of old wood groaning under pressure. He hesitated for just a moment, then continued, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the center of the bridge, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, the way the trees bent and twisted in the distance. But as his gaze focused, he saw a figure standing on the other side, a shadow against the dimming sky. It was a man, tall and gaunt, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. His figure was almost completely black, like an ink blot against the backdrop of the woods. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't possible. There was no one else out here. He was sure of it. "Hello?" Ethan called out, his voice sounding too loud in the eerie quiet. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as though studying Ethan. Then, with deliberate slowness, the figure raised a hand and pointed toward the other side of the bridge, the direction from which Ethan had come. Ethan's stomach turned. He had heard the rumors, no one should ever cross the bridge at night, no one should ever look at the person who stood there. But he couldn't help it. The figure's finger was pointed directly at him, and the strange, silent command was like a tug in his chest, pulling him toward the figure. Instinctively, he took a step forward, but as he did, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and making the trees sway like dark, twisted sentinels. The bridge creaked again, louder this time, as though protesting his movement. And then, in a flash, everything changed. The air grew thick and suffocating, the shadows deepening around him. The figure on the other side of the bridge disappeared, but the darkness seemed to close in on Ethan from all sides. His vision blurred, his head spinning as he felt an icy hand grip his shoulder from behind. He whipped around, his breath coming in short gasps, but there was nothing there. Except for the whispers. They were faint at first, a murmur beneath the wind, but then they grew louder, clearer, coming from every direction at once. Words that made no sense, voices that sounded as if they were speaking from the depths of the earth. "Leave," one voice hissed, a low rasping sound. "Come closer," another voice cooed, sweet and poisonous. A cold, gnawing fear filled Ethan's chest as he stumbled backward, trying to turn and run. But his feet wouldn't move. It was as though the ground beneath him had turned to stone, and his body refused to obey. The whispers grew louder, now full of desperation, as if the forest itself was crying out to him. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to block out the voices, trying to ignore the cold sensation creeping up his spine. But when he opened them again, the figure was back, standing at the other end of the bridge, its face now visible beneath the wide-brimmed hat. It was not a man at all. The figure's face was a twisted, hollow mask, its eyes black holes that seemed to suck in the very light around it. Its mouth was a wide, gaping wound, too wide to be human, and its skin was pale and rotting, as though it had been dead for years. Ethan tried to scream, but no sound came out. His throat was dry, constricted with terror. The figure took a slow, deliberate step forward, and with each step, the bridge seemed to groan louder, the sound of the creak beneath growing more violent. The trees above began to sway violently, their limbs scraping the sky like skeletal fingers. Then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, everything went silent. Ethan opened his eyes. The figure was gone. The bridge, the forest, everything was still. The wind had stopped. The creek had quieted. And the shadows, which had once seemed so dark and oppressive, were now simply shadows once more. But Ethan wasn't alone anymore. He turned, and Claire was standing at the far end of the bridge. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror, as if she had seen something that had shattered her mind. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. But as she took a step toward him, her feet faltered. The bridge, once solid beneath their feet, now seemed fragile and unsteady. The wood cracked and splintered beneath her weight, the boards breaking apart as she tried to move. "Claire! Don't!" Ethan shouted, but it was too late. The bridge collapsed, the creaking wood splintering into the creek below, taking Claire with it. The last thing Ethan saw was her face, twisted in a scream, as the darkness swallowed her whole.